It's a Sal Pal Friday powered by Dunkin' Donuts. Fuel up on Eagles game day with $1 medium coffee as Sal Paolantonio, national NFL reporter and correspondent, joins us here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. And don't forget to check out Sal on the Matchup Show tomorrow morning on The Deuce at 8:30. Sal Pal, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's so funny. I just left NFL Films, got on the Jersey Turnpike to drive up to Foxborough for Patriots and Chargers, and I stopped right outside NFL Films. There's a Route 38, Mount Laurel, brand new Dunkin' Donuts. I loaded up on a medium coffee. I swear I did. Medium coffee, and I get one chocolate frosted donut for the road. That's what I do. I splurge on a Friday, and that's what I get. I know I'm going to come on the Sports Bash with Mike Gill. I splurge.
I love it. And by the way, right after you got off last week, we had one of the Dunkin' Donut managers down here. He wants to do the instant analysis, me and you, at the Dunkin' Donuts down here. So we got to set that up.
I'm there. Done.
Hey, all right, let's get into some of this stuff here. We got a 6-1 Eagles team. We're halfway through the year, so we got to keep this season rolling. Things could change after the halfway point. So, number one of the big change, can they overcome the injuries? We know that's a big part of these seasons' success and failures, Sal. Can they overcome? These are some big injuries.
Well, they are. And, Bill Parcells and I always used to talk when he was the head coach of the Jets and head coach of the Patriots. And he always used to tell me, around week 8, what happens is two things. A team's identity begins to be defined, or injuries begin to get in the way of a team defining its identity. And for the Eagles, both of those things are happening at the same time. It's clear that the identity is all about number 11, Carson Wentz. He is combined rushes and passes. He's third in the league among quarterbacks. So they asked him to do just about everything with this offense. He was leading rusher and leading passer on Monday night. But then you lose Jason Peters. And to me, Jason Peters is a bigger loss than Jordan Hicks. And I think that the key thing now is for Jeff Stoutland, the offensive line coach, Peterson, Frank Reich, and John DeFilippo, that brain trust that runs the offense, those four coaches, and a little bit of Mike Rowe, those 5 coaches need to figure out how to change the offense so that Carson Wentz is not put in harm's way, at risk as much as he's been put. So what do? I think you leave Lane Johnson at the right side for a number of reasons. You don't want to upset both sides of the offensive line at the same time. So leave Johnson where he is and help Big V on the left side by using an extra tight end on the field, by using a back to chip anybody who would be rushing on Big V's outside shoulder. So that's 1. 2, use a lot more max protect in 2 and 3 of tight end sets to try to protect Wentz as much as possible. And 4, build in as many short passes as possible so that Wentz gets the ball out of his hands quickly.
Sal, last year, I want to get because the perception of Vaitai sometimes I think is tied to that one game he had in Washington, and we just assume, or a lot of fans assume, that's who he is. How far do the Eagles feel that he has come since that game?
Well, and that's the important question. How far do they feel he has come? They feel that he has come far enough to handle this job. So, he's very coachable. He's very tough. His problem is that he's not as agile as Peters. Peters is a former tight end, playing left tackle. So he's a monster blocker. He's got tight end feet and tight end hands. Big V doesn't have that. So, defensive coaches and defensive linemen and defensive ends from the right side will understand that the quickness is not going to be there, and they will try to speed rush him. But the key thing is that, Von Miller, DeMarcus Lawrence, and some of the others,
Khalil Mack down the road.
They're down the road. They rush from the left side. So having Johnson on the right side, I think, will be important to keep him there.
So, obviously, do you think this is like a tryout for him, or are they pretty steadfast on him? Like, are they going to keep their eye on a guy like Joe Staley, maybe a guy off the street like Brandon Albert, who was with Doug in Kansas City? Or is this pretty much they're going to sink or swim with what they got?
Well, that's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that. But for now, they are going to stick with Big V, I think, at least for the next couple weeks. The Staley thing, I don't know how real that is, but once Kyle Shanahan announced that they'd be willing to listen to offers, to me that drove the price down. You made him available. That means that that's definitely a buyer's market for Joe Staley. One, and two, he's 33 years old. Like, he's not a young player. So I don't. Am I correct in that or not?
No, it's funny because he's going to be here this weekend, so it's a chance to really get an up close and personal look at him.
Yeah, but he's 33, so I'm not giving up a high draft pick for him.
Right, and the Eagles don't have a lot of picks, Sal. I mean, they're kind of hamstrung with the moves they've made over the years. But I'll ask you that because your colleague Bill Polian over at ESPN said if there's one team that needs to make a move, he says it's the Eagles because they're in position to win now. So, is Howie do you think Howie's going to – if there's a guy in this league that likes to work the phones, it's Howie.
Yeah, and I'm sure that they are, but I'd be real careful giving up. Listen, they're in a win-now mode. Right. So, yeah, if they think that Staley can come in and help them right away, there really isn't too much of a price that you would pay. Because, if you're talking about a third-round pick in 2019 – you have no idea what this team is going to look like in 2 years. So that you have to pull a trigger on that easily.
I want to ask you about Nelson Aguilar because we have talked about him over the years, Sal, about I don't want to say so much is he a bust, but, it seemed like he wasn't going to give you the ROI for where you drafted him. He had the problems last year. How important has he become to this offense virtually? How surprised are the Eagles by his renaissance almost? Yeah,
I think it's vital. And I think the reason is Mike Groh. I think Mike Groh recognized the potential and got it out of Aguilar. I think having Alshon Jeffrey and Torrey Smith there, two veteran players, to make him understand the importance of how to work and what to do was key. So I think the combination of those two things helped Aguilar turn around his mindset. And now you put him in he's quicker off the ball than Jordan Matthews. And, he's catching the football, which is real good.
Yeah.
And he's not getting any double teams, which is great. And his ability to catch it from the slot makes Zach Ertz available because Ertz is going to be covered one-on-one. I mean, you have to pick your poison. If you're going to double Ertz, you can't double Jeffrey. So you're going to create, and you're not going to double Aguilar in the slot. They're doing a lot of clear-out routes, 9 routes with Torrey Smith. So you're clearing out with Torrey Smith, which means you're occupying a safety deep, at least in space, if not in coverage. And that's left a lot of stuff underneath available. And, you have a guy like Mac Hollins come off the bench who's the fastest of any of the wide receivers on this roster.
Yeah.
And he catches a 64-yard bomb on Monday night. So it's a nice combination to have. But I don't see them doing a lot of deep passing in this game. I think they're going to slog through this thing as much as possible and keep Carson Wentz whole and upright.
Yeah, I was going to ask, any concern – because it doesn't seem a lot of people are really looking at the actual game with this team. It's the injuries and everything else. So are you concerned or worried that they overlooked this 49ers team that 0-7? We see it. They got blown out last week. But they have played pretty tough for most of those 7 games this year.
Yeah, they're an NFL team, and they're going to play tough. And they're desperate to get a win, for sure. But they have a very inexperienced quarterback against one of the best defensive coordinators in the league. So I don't think that there'll be much of a threat at all to pass the football. The Eagles will, again, try to get an early lead and then just come after Beathard as much as possible.
All right, Sal Powell's keys to this game. Will the Eagles, Sal, Eagles fans be drinking $1 coffees the day after the Eagles' victory?
Absolutely. I'll be the first one in line.
You know how this is going to work out, Sal. We're going to have an Eagles-Cowboys showdown with the Mummers on New Year's Eve. It's going to come down to that, right?
Well, I don't know for the division title. I mean, I think the Eagles are going to win the next two games. I mean, Trevor Siemian and the Broncos have scored 2 offensive touchdowns in the last 3 games. And this week they got an incredibly tough matchup in Kansas City. So I don't see them getting healthy, in terms of their offense anytime soon. And so I have the Eagles at 1 at the break, facing the Cowboys at that point. It's 8-1, which will be pretty formidable. And I think that's a Sunday night game, right?
The Dallas game.
Yes, coming back off the bye.
Yep. Hey, by the way, don't forget Sal Pal ESPN for his instant analysis on the NFL, and you will be in Foxborough. I'm intrigued by that game. That Chargers team's won 3 in a row. You got the Hightower injury, banged up team out in New England. So Sal Pal ESPN on Instagram for the instant analysis of that one.
I'll be there, and we'll have plenty of stuff on the Instagram site. I'll be on SportsCenter, and I would invite people to watch the matchup show because Greg Cosell and Lou Riddick have some terrific breakdowns of the Week 8 games. This is where the rubber meets the road right here, Mike Gill.
And by the way, that piece on Wentz, you were accurate. That was excellent last week on the matchup show. 8:30 on the Deuce, 6:30 on Sunday on the Mothership. He's Sal Paolantonio here on a Sal Pal Friday. Sal, we'll talk to you next week.
You got it. Thanks, Mike.